This video is sponsored by Goodwall. Today on the Kickback.
About like the US being what you saw in movies. So I grew up on like a lot of shows like on Disney and Nickelodeon, where like the norm is people break out dancing, people start singing with these heavenly voices. People are so talented. And so yeah, like you quickly realize that it's actually not also musical and also glamorous.
So I have like a horror story for international students. So I left the country, tried to get back in, couldn't because my I-20 wasn't signed, and it was just a whole mess. The most stressful day of my entire life. Whatever newsletter ISSO sends out, read it.
What's up, what's up, what's up? It's your girl Dom, and welcome back to the Kickback. We have some international students here to tell us why they decided to study internationally, how they like it, what they miss about their home country, and about the applying process. Today's video is sponsored by the new app Goodwall. I've been using it and I'm obsessed because it not only connects you to people with over 1 million students and young professionals on the app, but also shows you job opportunities, internships, and scholarships. It's a new outlet to showcase your biggest achievements. Basically, after you set up your profile, you can go over to the profile icon. You can import a video that describes yourself, showcase your work experience, your education, your skills, and my favorite part, your biggest achievement. Mine was hitting 50K subscribers on YouTube, which was massive. You can also join community challenges and check out other people's achievements, leave feedback, and get some inspiration. You can find opportunities like internships, jobs, and scholarships. We're all broke. We all need money at the end of the day to pay for college. Lastly, over at the group chat icon, you can literally join group chats with students across the globe. It's basically like a global kickback on your phone. If this is an app that you think that you would use, you can go ahead and download it for free at the App Store and post your biggest achievement and use the keyword the kickback. When using that keyword, I will be able to go and check out your achievement and leave you some feedback and maybe even get inspired as well. This week's international students heading to the Kickback are Yale University's Mehmed from Turkey, Brown University's English student Molly, Kenyan Princeton student Ronnie, Cornell student Katie from the Philippines, all the way from the Netherlands, Barbara from Harvard University, located in Thailand, Christy from Dartmouth College, from the University of Pennsylvania, South African student LJ, and the Bohemian Columbia student Lauren. So go ahead and prepare your ears for some accents and let's head to the Kickback. Hello guys and welcome to the Kickback. Today we have some international students from all over the world. So first I'm going to have them introduce themselves, starting with Princeton.
My name is Ronnie Kihonge. I go to Princeton University. I'm a rising junior right now in the economics department, and I am from Kenya, right there.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a rising junior at Cornell University. I'm an information science major and I'm from the Philippines.
Hey, I'm Christy and I'm a senior at Dartmouth. I study computer science and I'm from Thailand.
Hi, I'm Barbara. I'm a rising senior. I study psychology and I'm from the Netherlands.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren. I'm a rising junior at Columbia studying sustainable development and political science, and I'm from the Bahamas.
Hi guys, I'm Mehmet. I'm from Yale, a rising junior majoring in history, and I'm currently in Turkey, which is where I'm from.
Hi guys, I'm OJ. I'm currently studying behavioral economics and I'm a rising junior from South Africa.
Hi, I'm Molly. I'm from England and I am a rising senior at Brown studying literary arts.
So the first thing I want to do with this cast is play a little game. And this game is called, it's called Fake Citizen. So basically, I have all of your national anthems lyrics on my phone. And the point of the game is to see who is a fake citizen. So whoever can go farthest word for word of their anthem gets the crown of not being a fake citizen. I know some of you guys' anthems are not in English, so I do have your native language, but I have the English next to it. So if you know the English version, then that's better. But if not, I have this sounding out Thai words ready to go.
This is not going to go well for me, so don't worry about it.
Okay. So I'm going to choose my school. Who's going to go first when I pull up your lyrics? And you just have to just sing your national anthem. It's not hard.
Singing it or saying it?
Can we say it if our voice isn't born for singing?
Yeah,
there's no way I can sing it.
You can say it then. You can say it. So the first one I have is Kenya's.
Oh God. All right. Oh God of all creation, bless us our land and nation. But I think it's actually better if I sing it.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh God of all creation, bless this our land and nation. Justice be our shield and defender. May we dwell in unity, peace, and liberty. Plenty be found within our borders. I literally don't know the second and the third verses.
That was good. All you have to do is one verse.
Sweet.
Killed it. You are a real citizen, my friend. A real citizen. Okay, so next, who's ready to go? We have Turkey.
Okay, I'm starting. So we don't have the English translation ever. We never sing it, so I don't know it. So I'll just say it in Turkish, if that's okay.
Go ahead. Okay. I have that. Yep.
Korkmasın mez bu şafaklarda yüzen al sancak. Sönmeden urdumun üstünde tütenin sonacak o benim milletimin yıldızıdır, and it goes on and on and on.
That's beautiful. Well done. A real citizen.
A real citizen. If anyone watches this who's actually from Thailand, it's over for me, but...
So since you said that, let's do Thailand.
Oh, okay. I guess we're going. Okay. So, Prate Thai, Rum Lu Nu Charu Thai, Pen Fasharat, Patai Kong Thai Suku Wan, Yuda Rong Kwan Ten Thai Thai Changwon. And it keeps going, but I don't want to butcher it anymore, so.
That literally is exactly how it looks like it would be said. So well done. Real citizen. The Netherlands.
Okay, I will try singing it. I'm pretty sure I should know it.
You
got Wilhelmus von Nassau ben ik van Duitsen bloed. De vader onze trouwe ben ik tot in den dood. Okay, I got confused for a second, but I got some.
That was good. You got the first 3 lines. That was good. That was good to me. And your voice is actually really pretty. That was good. Okay, real citizen. All right. So next, let's do London's.
Okay. God save our gracious Queen, and holy Queen. God save our Queen. Oh no, not unholy. Sorry. Santa victorious, happy and glorious. Ding 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 ding. I'm a terrible citizen. I probably have one of the easiest ones, but yeah, I usually mouth it and watch other people. Anyway.
I like the ding ding ding.
I'm so sorry, Molly, but that was a fake citizen.
So bad.
South Africa.
So we have 4 different languages. So I'm just gonna do the English part, or do you want the whole thing?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Sounds cool to come together, and united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land.
Yay!
One thing, but it's worth a try.
That was good! How about the Bahamas?
Okay. All right. Lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahamaland. March on to glory, your bright banners waving high. Is that enough, or do I keep going?
That was beautiful.
Okay.
I mean, now we know who amongst us can actually sing.
That was so good. What the heck, Lauren? That was so good. Okay, and then lastly, we have the Philippines.
Okay, my science teacher in 8th grade used to like make us go in the front and sing our anthem. So let's hope I remember. Tayang magiliw, perlasang silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dilmo'y buhay, lupang hinirang, di ka nang magiting sa manalupig, di ka pasisigaw sa dagat at bundok. Okay, we can like, I think I know it.
It becomes a rap at some point.
Yeah.
It becomes a rap at some point. That's a pretty cool.
I just made it a rap. Hitting the high notes.
Katie, you're like, I hope I remember it. And you just said the whole thing. That was crazy. Well, that was a real citizen too. So that was really good, guys. So we only have one fake citizen, unfortunately. Molly.
Oh my God.
Awesome. So now that we have gotten kind of more familiar with everybody's country in a singing sense, my first question is, what made you guys decide that you wanted to study internationally and not stay in your home country, knowing that your friends are there and your family's there? What made you want to leave to come to the States?
So like I did start university in South Africa, so I did like half a year, but that's because our school years go from January to November. And like the US kind of, they really do like have that like opportunity that South Africa don't really have. And like when I was in UCT, there was a lot of striking within the country. So like if I wanted to have like a stable like education the whole time without breaks, it seemed like America was a good place to go and like with opportunity, etc.
I think for me, it had a lot to do with where I could get the best opportunities. So there's only one university in the Bahamas, which is University of the Bahamas. And the closest major it had to what I wanted to do, which is sustainable development, is kind of a program they have called Small Island Sustainability, which is great. We love like the small islands, and I definitely like focus a little bit on that in my sustainable development journey. But I wanted more of like a global education, and I wasn't really going to get that by staying at home. Also, the political science aspect of it we don't really have here, so definitely like the program availability was important. Also, just like resources and like wanting to like go abroad and like new teachers, new perspectives, that kind of thing.
In England, you can only study one subject at university, and you have to decide the subject when you're like 16, 17, and then you just do 3 years of that one subject. And that nothing really caught my attention subject-wise. I'm more of a generalist, and so the fact that you can take loads of different subjects and get a liberal arts education was a super strong pull. Plus just American universities in general, the stuff you see about like sports and campus culture and stuff, it's much more of there's a reason I think that people feel so connected to their universities in America as compared to sometimes in other countries, I think, which is really cool. It's like one big family, not to sound too cliche, but yeah.
Personally, I went to an international school where I grew up kind of studying everything in English. And in Thailand, there aren't very many English university programs. So for a lot of students in my high school, it was pretty common to apply to colleges outside of the country. So a lot of students from my school went to college in the UK or the US or Australia, for instance.
And also there's the fact that American universities are usually a hub for international students and American students alike. So if I were to go to a Turkish university, for example, the people I'll be surrounded with would be the people I was surrounded with in high school. Whereas in the United States, you get to meet people from like parts of the world that you haven't been to, that you don't know anything about. So that's also a biggie in terms of culture. So
it just happened that my sister is 4 years older than I am. So then the time when I was supposed to be going into university, she had just finished her time in university in Kenya. And based on her experience, like what her friends were going through, things like not graduating in like the 4 years that you were promised because of things like strikes and there's like lots of irregularities in the system. she didn't want me to go through the same. And so then she convinced my mom that I should apply to universities in the US. And in my family, it's my dad, me, my sister, and my mom. And so then the two of them gang together, and I just had to apply to universities in the US. There was no beating the system.
For me, I think it was a little bit different in that when I was 16, I got a scholarship to go to these international schools called United World College to finish my high school. So I actually finished high school in Wales. And then after those 2 years, I realized if I go back to the Netherlands now for university, I'm probably never going to leave again. And I kind of just wanted more adventures. So I just applied to universities all around the world. I applied to the US, the UK, and a bunch of other countries, just to see what would happen. And then I ended up here at Harvard.
Yeah, going off the theme of adventure, I'd say I grew up in a pretty conservative country, the Philippines. Also grew up in a conservative household, and I was a woman, so I faced a lot of double standards, and a lot of the things I grew up with were just listen to your elders, follow your family, and that was all I knew my whole life until I went to an international school, and there I was told to do the exact opposite, to challenge everything, to discover knowledge for yourself. And I think that was a very pivotal moment in my life where I felt really empowered by just a diverse education, and it made me want to pursue that abroad.
So with everyone realizing they wanted to go abroad, what made you guys choose out of all of the places to apply to in the States, unless you applied to other universities, but to go to an Ivy League, to shoot for the stars and go for the top tier education?
I don't know. For me, it was go big or go home. Might as well just try. Even if I didn't get in, I still had I don't really like calling schools safety schools, but I definitely had schools that, I felt with my grades I'd be able to go to. But also I feel as an international student, the Ivy League schools are the ones that you hear about in TV shows or you see in movies. And those are what kind of get recognized as the top tier, best of the best. So I guess it kind of gets almost ingrained in you, those are the type of schools you should be aiming to go to.
Yes, for me it's the same as Lauren. There's only some schools that you really hear about, being so far away from America. So the Ivy is something that we do hear a lot about. And for example, I'll be watching Suits, and all of a sudden I'll hear Penn. I'll be and then I'll start to learn more about the school. So it's stuff like that that really intrigued me.
So I went about my application process through this program called Kenya Scholar Access Program. It's an organization that basically helps students who perform pretty well on the national exams to apply to universities in the East Coast. And it's one of the programs among many in Africa that actually helps students do this. I think that the full list can be found on haliaccess.org. So then when you join the program, you do your ACTs, and then based on your ACTs, they kind of tell you where you think you do well. And so then a year ahead of me, there was this girl. She ended up going to Princeton. We got pretty close. And I was I definitely want to go to wherever she is. When it came to the time for me to choose a school, it was just Princeton is where she is. That's where I'm going to go. And it worked out.
I think my situation was quite different from Ronnie's. In my case, at least, the people I was surrounded with who were applying to colleges abroad, we didn't really have, we couldn't really afford to be selective in that the admissions rates for international students are already really low. And what we thought was we better apply to all the Ivies plus many, many safe schools, safety schools, and whichever one we get into, we'll go there. And that's basically what happened in my case. I applied to many schools, got into 3, 4, 2 of which were Ivy League schools, and chose Yale. So if I were to suggest something to the international community who is watching, I'd say just apply to as many schools as you can. And since the rates are so low, some schools will accept you, some schools won't, and then you'll kind of then decide which ones.
I definitely agree with that. And to add another layer to why I focused my applications on the Ivies, I think it's a brutal but real reality that a college education nowadays is very expensive, especially for international students when we need to buy flights back and forth, apply for visas, all sorts of things. So for international students looking for something that I guess like can provide some sort of value, I think because the Ivy League's been around for so long, it feels like there's some sort of like at least baseline level of quality of education that we're going to get from it. So I think that's part of why the Ivy Leagues are so popular among international communities.
Piggybacking off of that, I think that was a really good point in that, for example, myself, I was kind of, I think, rejected from all the mid-tier schools that I applied to because I was applying with financial aid and get accepted to Brown, Dartmouth, and Yale, which are schools with big budgets that can really afford to have people on financial aid. So especially if you're applying for financial aid in your applications, you should consider schools with big budgets because those are going to be the schools that are going to be able to afford you studying that and not paying much.
And going off of that, one big consideration for me was, I mean, I definitely did not apply just to Ivies. I only applied to 2 Ivies. And the main reason I applied to Harvard was because it was the only one I really had an image of because, you know, I saw like Legally Blonde. And, you know, as international students, we often don't get the chance to really visit campuses before applying. And so I kind of just went off of that, you know, what websites look nice. But then the second part for me was a big thing is I found somewhere on the internet a list of American colleges that are need blind for international students. And knowing that I would need a huge amount of financial aid to attend these universities, which are, you know, very expensive, I basically just went off of that list and just applied to all the ones because even if some universities give like really good financial aid to American students, that doesn't mean necessarily that they also give it to internationals.
Just to add on to that, for Cornell, at least it is need blind for local citizens in the States, but it is need aware for international students. So yeah, that's a really good point you bring up. And another tip for financial aid is sometimes standardized test scores can also be costly. So one tip is to maybe ask your guidance counselor or education organizations to see if you can get a fee waiver to, you know, for the application fees for standardized tests. So I actually went into this not like vying for an Ivy. I always thought that I would end up on the West Coast because I'm from a tropical country. I didn't think I would survive on like the East Coast at all, but it just so happened that the school I was accepted to, Cornell, like met all my academic hopes and just like campus culture and what I wanted in a college experience. So I just convinced my parents to like send me to the middle of nowhere.
When you say why Ivy, I think that often for international students, we don't know because of visas where we're able to work if we're allowed to stay in America afterwards and in the US. And so I really wanted, if I was going to make that huge move, go somewhere that would be internationally recognized for like careers afterwards. And I know that sounds a bit, but like it just makes things a bit easier if people actually know what it is. Yeah, and also just hearing about it in movies and stuff is very, you know, it's a big pull in like popular culture as well. Just because everyone's aware of what it is. I think awareness is a huge thing.
Brown got a lot of awareness this year with You. I don't know if you guys watched You.
Not in a good way.
Not at all. Okay, awesome. So going off of that, so now you guys decided, I want to study internationally and I'm going to apply to some Ivies. So how did the application process go? Because I know you guys still have to take ACT, SATs. There might not be as many SAT classes because you're abroad. So how does that whole applying process go? And even you can throw in visa stuff there too.
With ACT and SAT, we had no classes, at least in my school, or so you just do it all on your own. And there are amazing online resources, but it does mean you just have to put in a lot more of the work on like certain subjects that just aren't taught on the UK curriculum, and I'm sure in other countries too. And then actually applying, it was kind of confusing, but again, there are so many great resources online that kind of walk you through it. And what really helped me was knowing 1 or 2 people who happened to be from England, who'd gone through the same process or had gone to a similar school with a similar thing, and talking to them and sitting with them and maybe like Skyping them and asking what they did.
I think definitely it was really expensive, which was something that was kind of difficult just in terms of like trying to like send all of my materials or like taking the ACT. I'm not sure if it's the exact same. I think some countries have exceptions, but for the Bahamas, we had to pay like double the price in order to like take the same test just because they had to send it internationally. It was an extra $50 to take the ACT. So that meant that I could take it fewer times. So like every time I was studying, it had to be, like this is probably like the only time that you can take it. So you might as well make it good. And also with like what someone mentioned earlier about like not being able to visit campuses before you go, the application process looked a lot like, watching YouTube videos or like doing online campus tours just because I knew that I wouldn't be able to go to a days on campus, or even like in terms of talking to people like from the Bahamas who had like gone to Ivies, there weren't really any. Even like now while I'm at Columbia, I don't know any international students from the Bahamas, like a couple people of like Bahamian heritage. But I think when you come from like a very, very small country where it's like almost like rare for people to go to Ivy Leagues, it really can be kind of isolating because you feel like you're on your own in the application process. But like I said, there's a lot of resources online, and Molly mentioned it as well. So
again, just being like a shameless plug here. Again, found on Hali Access, because like, so the program that I went through is like a 4-month kind of boot camp kind of thing. So this is a Kenyan one, but these ones all across like different countries in Africa. And so they basically covered all my costs, including ACTs. It was a class of 19 students, literally tutored all of us for the whole time free. And basically, because like the Kenyan curriculum doesn't teach you anything that you're probably going to find on the ACTs. And so it was just like 4 months of intense studying of ACTs by materials that are provided by them. And they also get like tutors from like American universities to come down to Kenya and tutor us on like the ACTs. And so it somewhat made it way easier than like maybe most international students have it. And so that's why like I'm a huge champion for like this access programs that are run across different countries in Africa.
Yeah, and then in like South Africa, there's like Education USA. So pretty much all the Ivy Leagues come to like the country and like together, and like they do presentations. So like Penn, Harvard, etc. will all be come to one school and like present to anybody could pretty much come. And I think it's important to go as many of those as possible, because since you don't get to go to campus, like you get to learn more about the school that way from like them in person. Because like I knew a few people who went to Ivy Leagues, but you only get a few perspectives. And like when you actually go to those presentations, it's like you could actually see the school in a different light, and it's like you could see social, you could see academic, and that's one thing I really appreciated, and I recommend it to anybody.
So I have 2 points. First of all, a pro tip that I found out is that, the college application process is really complex and it's really expensive. But if you're like getting stopped from applying because of the cost, sometimes just emailing the financial aid office of your university you're applying to, sometimes they can help you get fee waivers as well. So definitely don't not apply to university because that application fee is like prohibiting you. Just email them and see if there's a possibility. And secondly, with regards to the SAT, I also think as an international student, it can sometimes be harder to get a really good score on that, because it's kind of assuming that you've had this like American high school background. And for example, for me, my SAT score was really not very good, and it almost stopped me from applying to Harvard and to other Ivy Leagues, because I thought, when you look up the statistics, like, oh, my score doesn't fit into the bracket of what they usually accept. But again, definitely don't let that stop you, because as an international student, someone with like a less conventional background, sometimes SAT score really doesn't matter that much if you have like other things about your application that stand out. So don't worry too much about the SAT, I would say.
And don't go online and say what's like average like SAT score of a certain school, because like, for example, I put up my SAT score and I was like, oh, there's no ways I'll ever get in. Those websites don't really take into consideration like you as an entire applicant. So yeah, don't use those.
Same thing for GPA as well. Like find a basically it's assuming like the difference between like weighted and unweighted GPAs, which like some international schools don't have, or just like completely different curriculums and different like IB versus like something like AP or something else. Just don't do them. They mean nothing, I promise.
Yeah, I couldn't stress enough, I guess, the essays, I think, are just super important in terms of just showing who you are and what you're about and the potential and ambitions you have. And I think that's kind of what saved me, was just writing something that hopefully caught their attention in a way that can like balance out scores and stuff and like the rest of your like academics. I think you can really show who you are and really utilize the essays. I think that's super important.
Yeah, just going off of that, I think that's a biggie for Yale. People who I know who got into Yale, I think all have shown in their essays or in their applications throughout a consistent interest on something, be it film, be it technology, be it anything really, but some consistent kind of interest in a very particular field. And also just kind of wrapping up what everyone said, I think there are three important components of your application: the essays, the test scores, and your GPA from high school. I think they're all equally important. At least I was made to feel that while I was applying. So SATs, yes, they're really important and you should study for them, but they're not the only thing, and they're like one part of a multitude of things.
And I also want to highlight that, you know, the considerations that international students have to make don't end there. There are also a lot of economic considerations we have to make after. So with visas, for example, if you're on a visa like I am, I'm on the F1 visa, and that's likely what you'll be if you're not an American citizen, is you may have some work restrictions. So you can only work on campus for max 20 hours. If you want to get a job in the States after, it has to be within your field of study. And America, as you'll learn, is like a very political country, and a lot of times people will tell you to vote, and I'm not a citizen, so I can't vote. So there are some things that, you know, will still set you apart.
Can anyone else speak on that? Like things that you notice that kind of set you apart, or what your visa allows you to do and not to do?
So I have like a horror story for international students kind of on this, but it's related to like the visa and like work restrictions. But okay, mini story time. My first semester, I knew that my visa could get me like a job on campus. So I applied, I got my job, I was excited, and I worked the full extent of my job. And then it wasn't until after I'd already finished my job, and when I went to go and try to get paid, they told me that I couldn't get paid unless I had a social security number. So I went through a whole process with ISSO, which is like the International Student Organization, like, you know, trying to get a social security number after I'd already finished the job. And it wasn't until like 2 months in the process, they told me that like you could only get a social security number for a job that you're currently working in. So in order to get paid for the job that I'd already worked, I had to find a new job and get a social security number with that job in order to get paid for the job I previously had. I tried to like apply for new jobs, and then they kind of told me that the jobs were priority for like work study students, or like some jobs wouldn't hire me because I already didn't have a social security number. And there's so many like hurdles you have to jump through. Like I still haven't found a new job to get like paid for that old job. I like became an RA to try to get paid, and they were like, sorry, we don't give social security numbers for RA jobs. And it's so hard and it's so difficult. Even just like if you are like, say like a freelance photographer, or like you do like modeling or acting or whatever, like part of the reason why I applied to New York is because like those are things that I'm interested in. And I wanted to like have the opportunity to like, you know, do acting jobs, or like, you know, like explore like New York City for like the fashion like capital it is, that kind of thing. And you don't have those opportunities as an international student. Like it's so difficult, and there's so many like hurdles and like restrictions to what you can and can't be a part of. And it's like really, really upsetting sometimes, honestly.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because the fact that I don't have an SSN is something that I'm constantly reminded of. Just like during back to school season, when, you know, you buy a lot of stuff for your dorm, supplies. I'm trying to save money and apply to these loyalty programs, and they're like, hey, what's your SSN? And I'm like, I don't have one. Sorry, you don't qualify.
I remember I got a social security number last summer ahead of my internship because they required it. You have to go through all this paperwork in order to get paid in America, even for like a summer as an international student. And so I'd recommend to anyone who has one of those opportunities, that's a great time to like hop on that social security number thing and like just keep it throughout the rest of your time there. Because I think that can, it can save you in sticky situations, but also really utilize the international student office
Also, I have another horror story because I've been struggling. I'm so sorry. But going off of what Molly said about like trying to keep in contact with like your international student office, high key recommend, because basically like my ISSO would send out like newsletters like every month or whatever, and the headlines or like the tag emails would be like, you know, free tickets for so and so. So I just like wouldn't open it or wouldn't care to read it. And then like at the bottom, it would be like important information about the I-20, like make sure you get your I-20 signed or like you won't be able to come back into the country. And I just didn't see that at all. So I left. So I left the country. Basically, I-20s, like I guess to preface this, your I-20 has to get signed every year. So like from the first time it was signed, didn't know that. ISSO, that could have been like the tagline of an email. They just put it at the bottom. So I left the country, tried to get back in, couldn't because my I-20 wasn't signed. And it was just a whole mess. The most stressful day of my entire life. Whatever newsletter ISSO sends out, read it. Have like a contact person maybe in the office to avoid situations like that. But yeah, there's a lot there.
I'm also hoping, just on a side note, I'm praying that the American, whatever you call it, the people who like run all this international stuff, make it go online eventually, because we literally rely on an A4 piece of paper that's so flimsy. You keep on having to fold it into your passport, and like by the end of the 4th year, you know, it's like this weird little sheet that gets you through, and it's like, how does this prove that I'm allowed here for like 4 years? Anyway, that's a side note, but it should go online.
Yeah, I think on campus, you know, because there's like international student office and like a lot of resources for international students. I think as long as I'm on campus, I feel as an international student, I'm really not very different from like my fellow American students, at least not in terms of opportunities. It's only when you go off campus, when you try to find a job off campus or like an internship, that you realize, you know, as an international student, you are treated differently in the US.
So basically, as an international student, you have two options: either OPT, which is optional practical training, or CPT, curriculum practical training. And for the longest time, Princeton didn't offer CPT. So if I was to work off campus, I'd have to apply for OPT. And to apply for OPT, the application fees is $410 to start with, and the kind of paperwork to do. They usually, at least at Princeton, they usually advise you to like apply even if you don't have a job. If just like if in case you're thinking about getting a job, because the processing time is 3 months, and so you have to apply 3 months before, like say the summer starts, if you're going to do something during the summer. And at this point, you're still not sure if you have a job. And if it happens that you don't get a job, nobody's going to refund you $410. And all the time and effort that you put into writing all these pieces of paper that are so annoying. And so, yeah, I feel like that's another hurdle that most international students have to face. But I feel like with a CPT, which is offered by your department on campus, it makes it somewhat simpler. It doesn't have like an application fee. It doesn't have like all this crazy paperwork. And then something else is that I'd recommend that as soon as you get like your first job, to get your SSN number. At least for Princeton, they do like a trip to the registration office. I think like 2 weeks into the year for international students. So you basically get your job as soon as possible. Then after 2 weeks, the International Center for Princeton takes you to like go and apply for it. Because yeah, I mean, you need an SSN for literally everything. If you need like a driving license, if you want to like trade stocks or something, you'll definitely need an SSN.
It's like so interesting for me because even like trading stocks, like to me as an American, I would never even think. Like my social security number, I'm just like, I forget what it is. So it's like interesting to hear how much of a struggle it is without it. Crazy. I'm sorry, guys. But okay, so you guys decided you wanted to go to an Ivy. You decided internationally, and you left, and you go to America. And what do you guys think when you get here? Not necessarily your culture shock, because that's what we're gonna do next episode, but more of, is it like the movies? Is it like what you expected America to be? Is this your first time even being in the States? And then additionally with that question, on campus, do you feel as though you have mostly international friends, or are the Americans really welcoming and you have American friends as well?
I think one thing that Barbara just mentioned in the previous response was really important, which was I was made to feel like I was a Yaley at Yale, and not that I was an international student, nor that I was a Turkish student. And I think that's a very important thing that some of the Ivy League schools do manage to make the international students feel like. And that was very helpful.
Yeah, I think same here as an international student. I think I assimilated really well. Like people didn't really suspect that I was an international student. I think a lot of people just assumed I was Asian American. And I think a lot of people at Cornell at least just assume you're either from like New York, New Jersey, or somewhere on the East. And yeah, they don't really think twice about it.
I found, well, about America and like the movies and stuff, it really did to me seem like the movies. I mean, everything kind of rang true, at least at the beginning, and still, but just you know, sports games and all that, when people would like jump on each other after a basketball match, I was like, I am living in High School Musical right now, and that's really cool. But yeah, I feel like the same thing, you know, it's very international. Brown's a really international school, but my friends are, I'd say, mainly American, but have tons of international friends too. And I just think it's one big melting pot of cultures, which I remember Mehmed said at the beginning of why you went to, why you wanted to go to Yale. It is just, well, just these Ivy Leagues have so many different cultures. And so you're definitely made to feel right at home.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. For international students here at Harvard, when you arrive, there's like a special pre-orientation program. So you kind of get to meet all the international students first before you meet the Americans, which is kind of like a soft introduction to the US. Again, like most of my references about Harvard were from movies. And I have to say, I'm a little disappointed that my daily life doesn't really like, you know, resemble that a lot. You know, like you kind of just start feeling at home here and you don't really realize how special it is to be here, especially as an international student. You know, I don't walk around all day being like, this is where Elle Woods walked as well. But sometimes you think about it and you're like, wow, it's pretty cool that I am here.
Going off of what like Katie said, I think other than like, you know, some like academic stuff, I guess, or like economic stuff, I think that's where I feel more like an international student. But in like social day-to-day life, like when I first got on campus, because I don't really speak with a thick like Caribbean accent, people don't automatically identify me. They just assume that I'm African American or, you know, something else. But yeah, I feel like because of that, my social circles are kind of mixed because Columbia definitely is known as like the international Ivy. So for that reason, like there are a lot of international students. So it's like very, very common to see other international students around.
In terms of like Penn, I feel like it is like this great place with just like a whole bunch of like nationalities, etc. And like, so like my friends have been both from each side. At Penn, I would say you do know who's international, but it's not like they are separated or anything. It's like everyone's still together, but you just know who's international, whether it's through accents, whether it's through like different sports teams. So for example, like the rugby team is, most of us are international in the rugby team, or whether it's like what fraternity you're in, it's kind of different. Like everyone knows who's international, but everyone still like really clicks well together.
Something I forgot to add is that there is kind of a stereotype about international students. I'm not sure if it goes for like all of the Ivies, but when I first got to Columbia and I would like tell people that I was international and like my other international friends as well, people would kind of assume that like, oh, you're very wealthy, or oh, you're not on financial aid, or like just other type of stereotypes that usually had a lot to do with money, and that's just not the case. It's kind of a stereotype that we need to like break down because it's not true.
I agree, that is such a huge stereotype, like the idea that, you know, we've seen it on like meme pages, you know, like international students always being like super wealthy. I think especially at the Ivy League, because, you know, they have solid financial aid programs, that is completely a stereotype and absolutely not true. And I definitely thought like, oh, I don't know, will all my fellow international students be like super wealthy or something like that? And it's totally not true. Honestly, I think being an international student is like more fun than being an American student, just because you get this like extra community on top of like the whole university community. So yeah, don't worry about that.
I just wanted to add something specific to Dartmouth, which I don't think is actually as common in other Ivies, but Dartmouth is a pretty small Ivy. We have about 1,000 people per class, and the international community is pretty small. Like we only have about, I think maybe 80 to 90 international students here. So we are a pretty small community. And I would say that in some ways, that's awesome because I feel like I know people in the international community and also out of the international community, almost out of necessity. But I will say that that is something that shocked me a little bit when I first got to Dartmouth because I was just expecting a kind of a stronger presence.
About like the US being what you saw in movies. So I grew up on like a lot of shows like on Disney and Nickelodeon, where like the norm is people break out dancing, people start singing with these heavenly voices. People are so talented. And then so my first time in the US was an exchange program that I did back in 2015 in like this high school in Boston. And so yeah, like you quickly realize that it's actually not also musical and also glamorous. And so yeah, like I guess one thing that quickly hit me was that it's not all that. Like in terms of opportunities and infrastructure, yes, above, but couldn't even imagine getting anything like this in Kenya. But that being said, there's still like so many things that the country is still struggling with that are not particularly shown in movies. And so you quickly learn that and in like the first year or so of your time in the US, and you get to appreciate that movies are somewhat distorted and may not be an accurate representation of what you thought it would be.
So comparing to your friends that stayed in your home country and went to university back home, would you say that you're happy with your choice to go abroad?
I did a year abroad at Oxford this year. So I was back home, well, not living at home, but back in England. And so it was really weird going into it, thinking, oh my God, maybe I'm going to realize that I made a huge mistake going to America. Maybe I should have always stayed. And it just made me realize how much going to America has made me change in great ways in terms of just becoming so much more open to the world and like even just to be integrated and like understand a different political system and problems of a different country, and the pros and cons, and just living in a different place teaches you so much about the world. I'm really, really grateful that I went somewhere else, where it doesn't need to be America, anywhere, but just somewhere else, just to teach you a lot more about and like open your eyes and just make you more knowledgeable about things, and not so, I don't know, I felt like I realized how naive I was going to America, having only experienced one kind of place, and I've learned a lot.
Going off of what you said, I really like the idea of pros and cons. So if you can hit any con now about studying abroad to go along with what you just said.
Con of studying abroad is really missing out on friends, because it is really expensive flying home, depending on how, it's how far away particularly. So you definitely don't see your family and friends as frequently on average, the average international student won't, and so you really miss out on home life, and then just feeling like I've really changed in a way that sometimes isn't compatible with some of the people I was friends with leaving school.
One thing I didn't expect is that I would also have greater appreciation for my own country, because when we're in a foreign university and sometimes you're the only person that the person will ever meet from your country. So I've had people tell me like, oh, I've never met someone from the Philippines, like you're the first. And so you realize that as an international student, you also represent your home country. And, every time you go back home, it makes you just like want to connect with your culture and go back to your roots, so that you can like tell others how like happy you are with your own country. And a con, I think, is I've never worked so hard. I think not only academically, but with also extracurriculars, and to better myself. I feel like I'm just this productivity obsessed person who just like always has to be doing something, and that's not the same at home. At home I'm like very chill, just like family. I can just do nothing, Netflix all day, but that's like unacceptable for me in the States.
When you're in America, it's like you're representing countries, you actually feel like even more proud, and it's like you're proud that you're in America and that you really experiencing life in a different view. But at the same time, when you go back home, it's like you appreciate the little small things where it's like just South Africa's like chilled vibes, because like America isn't that chilled, but like that's comparing to South Africa. But one con I can say is like you can't just like the time zone difference. So it's like when I was back home, it's like I could just call anybody and it's like they'll be awake. But like now it's like you kind of have to like keep in mind what the time is it back home versus America. So it's like that stuff you have to always like watch out for. But other than that, it's been just an amazing experience where you really do open your eyes. You find like new global friends. Like
going back to like what Molly said is something that I really experienced a lot, just because sometimes being an international student can get kind of lonely sometimes, especially if you do have a lot of American friends and then they're all going home for like fall break or Thanksgiving break or like spring break, and like you have to wait until like the end of the semester before you can get home. Like sometimes you'll be like on campus by yourself or like, you know, going like visiting somewhere, but it's not like with your family. So definitely those type of things can get, you know, be kind of cons of being an international student. I'd also say for me, weather is a big factor. Just like, you know, like being in a tropical country, my first time ever like standing in snow while it was falling was my first semester at Columbia. It was really exciting. It was like very, very cool to see it. But then like a week later, we had like a blizzard or something like that, and I had to walk to class in it. And I was just like, no, this is old. I want to go home. Sometimes the dining halls will try to make Caribbean food, and it's just not the same as like when my family makes it. So like a good home cooked meal, I guess, is definitely something that's like I miss a lot. But like a good pro, like a lot of people have mentioned, it's just growing up in Bahamas. I grew up in a country that's like 95, 96% like Black people, like a very, very like homogenous society. And I think going to a school like Columbia was my first time ever being like exposed to like so many different people of so many different identities. And I think it was really, really great for me in order to like expand my horizons and like understand different perspectives and like learn more about the world that I wouldn't have gotten if I'd stayed here in a place that like everyone's like pretty much the same. It's a toss-up definitely, but I'm really, really grateful that I got to go abroad.
Since I just graduated, I've obviously been doing quite a bit of reflecting, and going back to your original question about whether or not like going to Dartmouth was the right choice for me. It's super difficult to really say whether or not it was, because I think it's like you can never really know what going somewhere else was really like. So I think in that regard, it has been awesome in the sense that it's challenged me so much, and I've grown so much faster than I would have in any other situation. So that's awesome. But at the same time, like being international has, I think, required a lot of planning. I think we touched a lot on OPT and CPT, and just like you kind of just have to be really on top of the ball at all times in order to just jump through the hoops at the right times. And I sometimes wonder what college would have been like if I didn't have to book my flight home like 2 months in advance and could just like drive down to Connecticut on the weekends to see my family, for instance. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to not have to plan so much.
In terms of like pros and cons about being international, so when the pandemic started, all my friends who go to university in Kenya, they couldn't go on these online classes simply because like professors can't deal with like technology back at home, and so then they basically have to get 1 year back, 1 year behind, and so comparing to what happened at Princeton, where classes went on regardless of whether we were on campus or not, such a thing just made me realize that, oh, it's actually like different, and probably a good thing that I came to university here in the US. And on top of that, just like the endless opportunities that you get attending such a school where you can like study abroad. If you want to start like a business, there's literally people who will give you money just to try out your idea, regardless of how bad it possibly is. There's always going to be like people who are trying to reach out to like show you the next part of it. Whereas in Kenya, it was more of, you're in the deep end, figure out how to swim, you know. In terms of cons, like you definitely want like a balance of like your academic and like your social life. The adult age in Kenya is 18, here it's 21. So that just says a lot. I came here when I was 18, and it happened that I had taken about 2 years, 1.5 years between graduating high school and starting college here. And so then I had already turned 18, and I was basically like just going off. And then I come back here and they're like, you're not at 21, settle down, young man, and just don't do anything. I was kind of like a bummer. But yeah, no, overall, I just say that it's been a pretty pleasant experience being an international student at Princeton.
I think the biggest pro, so many people have mentioned it, there's so many opportunities here. I think American universities, they offer a lot more than just academics, like the amount of extracurriculars you can get involved with. There's like funding for lots of different initiatives like volunteering and internships and just really, really cool opportunities I would never have gotten otherwise. So I'm so grateful for that. And I think it was definitely the right choice to come here. I think for me, the main con is when I go back home to the Netherlands, I feel like a little bit detached, like I've been abroad for so long. I feel like I'm kind of losing a little bit of my Dutch identity. And that's kind of scary. Like sometimes when I speak in Dutch to someone who like I haven't met before, they will say that I speak Dutch with an American accent, which is horrible. Like no one wants to sound like an American in their native language. So, that's definitely a con. But it's also something you can like solve pretty easily, by spending summer breaks or winter breaks at home if you have the ability to.
Yeah, just to quickly echo what many people said, I think the fact that you get a perspective on the globe in general, but also on your country is a biggie. The fact that you get to be in seminar classes with all these high-profile professors is a biggie. The fact that you get to meet a lot of international students or American students with incredibly diverse backgrounds is a biggie. And in terms of academics, it's just unprecedented. I mean, at least like it can't be compared to most of the universities all around the world. So I'll just talk briefly about the cons. One really important thing is the climate and the food. I know that it sounds very inconsequential for someone who's applying who is in the process of applying right now, but food and climate, they're almost the two most important things they're the two most important things in the quality of life you want to endure. And I mean, climate-wise, northeastern United States, New England area is just horrible. I think I come from Istanbul, which is a huge city with more than 15 million people. You can go out to eat, great nightlife, cultural experience is wonderful, etc., etc. And New Haven was kind of under my expectations a little, just to point that out, like every good Yaley would.
Just a little?
Okay. Princeton can't really talk about this though. I mean, if it was Columbia, I would say.
I really couldn't even start talking about that. Yeah.
I love your one street.
What?
I love your one street.
Oh God.
Yeah, we at least have 2, 3, or maybe even 4 streets.
Dartmouth maybe has half a street, so you're miles ahead.
One stupid thing I did was I didn't apply to the Western schools in the West Coast of the United States because I thought it's already a 9-hour flight. I don't want to make it a 13, 14-hour flight, which is stupid because once you're on that plane, it's gonna feel like an eternity, whatever. So just don't do that. Apply to a bunch of schools. Consider the climate and possibly like the dining halls, the quality of food there. One last thing I want to say is just because you are not established in that country, everything from maybe getting a haircut to getting an SSN is going to be hard. And that's just the way it is. You're going to have to orient yourself once you start living in the city that your school is located in. But yeah, other than that, it's a great opportunity, and the pros definitely outweigh the cons, I'd say.
That's pretty much the conversation today. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video today, please make sure to smash that subscribe button and press the notification bell so you can know when I post, which is every Monday, Friday, sometimes Tuesdays if I am a little backed up, but I really try to do Monday, Fridays. These same 8 cast members are going to come back on Friday to talk about their biggest culture shock. So make sure you tune into that episode because I think it could be really interesting. Otherwise, have a great day and I'll catch you guys at the next Kickback. Bye!